of life, isn't it?
Absolutely. Good food, good company.
Couldn't ask for more.
How much for these tomatoes today?
They're very fresh, a good price for you.
So, what did you think of the movie?
It was interesting.
I thought it was a bit slow.
The morning sun crawled across the half-built bridge, its golden light slicing through the dust that hung thick in the air. Steel rods glistened like bones of an unfinished beast, silent and waiting. The echo of boots approached, measured, cold, deliberate. James, the CEO, stood at the edge of the construction site, his gaze cutting through the emptiness before him. Not a worker in sight. The wind whispered against the metal scaffolding, carrying with it the faint creak of failure. His jaw tightened. Where is everyone? His voice, sharp as broken glass, shattered the stillness. He pulled his phone from his pocket, the screen lighting up with Tu's name. Tu, he said, his tone calm but heavy with restrained fury. Why is the site empty? The machine's broken, you say. You should have called someone to fix it the moment it happened. Do you think the bridge will build itself before Tet? His voice rose slightly, carrying an authority that came from years of being obeyed. Tu stammered through the speaker, promising to find someone, to handle it, to make it right. But James had already stopped listening. He didn't trust promises. He trusted results. The phone call ended. He dialed again, this time to Nam, a man who got things done. Nam, I need you to send someone to fix the machine at Khoi Dao. Now. Not tomorrow, not after lunch. Now. His tone left no room for hesitation. If this delay continues, our entire schedule collapses. I won't have incompetence sink my company. He hung up, his reflection glinting faintly off a metal beam, stern, unreadable, and burdened by the weight of leadership. Behind him, the site lay still, like a sleeping monster waiting for its master's command. James stood there for a moment longer, the wind tugging at his shirt, and then turned to leave. His steps echoed, slow, deliberate, final, as if each step sealed a vow of control. He had built his empire brick by brick, sweat by sweat, and he would not let laziness unravel it. Far away from the noise of industry, the smell of soil and ripe fruit filled the air. Diep knelt in the small, uneven rows of her husband's garden, the sun pressing heavy on her shoulders. Her fingers, once soft and slender, were now cracked, etched with the harsh truth of survival. She heard the door creak open behind her, followed by the sharp, cold voice that had haunted her days since she returned. Her mother-in-law. Don't stand there daydreaming. Go pick those tomatoes. We need money for the market. The older woman's tone carried no warmth, no mercy, only the familiar bite of disdain. Diep rose slowly, wiping sweat from her brow. Her heart felt heavy, but she didn't speak. She knew that silence was her only defense here. Her mother-in-law continued, each word like a slap. You think you can stay here and eat for free? You owe this family 2 buffaloes worth of debt. You'll work until it's paid, even if your hands bleed. Diep nodded. She reached for the basket beside her, its woven edges rough against her palms. Yes, mother, she said softly, her voice steady but hollow. As she walked toward the tomato patch, the dry soil crunched beneath her bare feet. The plants stood tall and green, heavy with red fruit that glistened under the sun. She began to pick them carefully, one by one, placing each into the basket as though handling fragile hearts. In another life, she had known gentler mornings. The smell of coffee, laughter echoing in sunlit rooms, James's quiet voice discussing plans for the future. But that was before the debt. before she had been forced to wear poverty like armor and crawl back to a house that treated her as less than human. Every tomato she picked was a reminder of what she had lost: dignity, freedom, and love. The wind carried the faint murmur of voices from the road, a few villagers passing by, their laughter mocking in her ears. She pretended not to hear. Her mother-in-law watched from the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. To her, Diep was not a person, but a means to an end, a pair of hands to work, a debt to be collected. When the basket was full, Diep tied a cloth over her head to shield herself from the sun and lifted the heavy load onto her shoulder. She could feel the strain in her back, but she kept walking. The market was several kilometers away, but it was the only place she could turn sweat into coins. The road was long, dusty, and unkind. Children ran past her, laughing, carrying kites made from torn plastic. An old man pushing a bicycle gave her a sympathetic nod. She smiled faintly in return, a smile that held gratitude, exhaustion, and quiet pain. Her clothes were faded, her sandals worn thin, but her posture remained straight. Pride was the only thing she refused to sell. When she reached the market, the noise struck her like a wave. Merchants shouting, chickens clucking, the metallic clatter of coins. She found an empty spot near the entrance and set her basket down. "Fresh tomatoes," she called softly, her voice trembling at first, then steadier. "Fresh tomatoes, 20,000 a kilo." A woman approached, curiosity in her eyes. "Are they sweet?" she asked. Diep nodded. "Yes, freshly picked this morning." The woman smiled and filled her bag. 5 kilos, then." Diep weighed the fruit carefully, her fingers moving with practiced grace. "That's 100,000, she said. "Thank you." When the money touched her hand, it felt heavier than it should, not because of its value, but because of the effort behind it. As the morning wore on, she sold a few more kilos. Each customer was a small victory. Each thank you, a small kindness, she tucked away inside her aching heart. When an old man bought a single kilo and said, "You remind me of my daughter," she nearly cried, but she didn't. She smiled instead and whispered, "Thank you, sir." Behind her calm eyes, a storm brewed. She thought of James again, of his steady hands, the way he used to look at her like she was the only person in the world. She wondered if he still thought of her, if he knew how she lived now. Perhaps he did. Perhaps he didn't. It didn't matter. She had chosen this path to protect him, to carry the debt alone. The sun climbed higher, the market grew louder, and her basket grew lighter. Sweat dripped from her chin, tracing small rivers down her neck. She wiped it away and whispered to herself, "Just a little more." The afternoon sun began to dip, painting the sky in shades of copper and amber. The market was starting to thin, the smell of grilled corn and fish sauce hanging heavy in the air. Diep counted the few bills she had earned, her fingers trembling slightly. It wasn't much, barely enough for a day's worth of rice and oil, but it was something. She tucked the money deep into her pocket, as though afraid the wind might steal it. Her legs ached. Her shoulders burned from carrying the heavy basket, yet there was no time to rest. She needed to return home before dusk, before her mother-in-law's voice filled the yard again with accusations and venom. Diep glanced at the empty basket beside her, at the faint stains of red left by the tomatoes, and whispered softly, "At least I did something right today." As she began her walk back, the road stretched before her like an endless test of endurance. The sky dimmed, clouds gathering slowly, promising rain. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, feeling the cold wind seep into her bones. Her mind wandered, back to the past, to moments she wished she could erase and others she longed to relive. There was a time when James would call her Diep, my strength. She had laughed then, shyly, never believing that a man of his stature could see value in someone like her. He had offered her kindness when the world offered cruelty. He had taught her to believe in herself, and yet she had walked away, for his sake, for the debts she could not let him bear. The memory burned inside her like a wound that never healed. She stopped by a small roadside stall where a woman sold tea. The woman smiled, her face kind but worn. "You look tired, my dear," she said. Diep nodded, sitting on a small wooden stool. "Yes," she murmured. "It's been a long day." The tea was bitter but warm, a comfort she hadn't tasted in weeks. "You're selling tomatoes, aren't you?" the woman asked. "Yes," Diep said, "from my husband's family's garden." The woman studied her face, reading the unspoken sorrow in her eyes. "You're strong," she said finally. "Most would have left long ago." Diep smiled faintly. "Sometimes leaving isn't an option," she replied. She finished her tea, thanked the woman, and continued her walk. The words echoed in her mind. "You're strong." Strength, to Diep, was not in defiance or rebellion. It was in quiet endurance, in the ability to bow without breaking. When she reached the house, the yard was already darkening. Her mother-in-law stood by the door, her eyes scanning Diep like a hawk. "You're late," she snapped. "Where have you been? Did you sell them all?" Diep nodded, lowering her gaze. "Yes, Mother. I sold everything." She reached into her pocket and handed over the small stack of bills. The woman counted the money, her lips twisting. "So little? You were out the whole day and earned this?" Diep kept her voice calm. "That's all the customers would pay." But her mother-in-law's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Are you lying to me? Did you keep something for yourself?" She reached out suddenly, grabbing Diep's arm, her fingers digging into her skin. "Where's the rest? Tell me?" Pain flared through Diep's wrist, but she didn't flinch. "I swear, Mother, that's all." The older woman released her with a scoff. "Pathetic, useless girl. You think you can deceive me? I should search your pockets." Diep stepped back, trembling but silent. Silence was her shield, her invisible armor. From inside the house came the muffled sound of snoring. Her husband, asleep in the middle of the day, reeking of wine and failure. Diep glanced toward the sound, her heart heavy with resignation. The man she once called husband had become a stranger. Cruel when sober, dangerous when drunk. And yet here she was, still cooking his meals, still washing his clothes, still carrying his debts. Her father-in-law sat quietly by the fire, his eyes tired but kinder than the rest. He said nothing, but when Diep passed by, he gave a small nod, an unspoken gesture of sympathy. It was the only kindness she received in that house. She moved to the small kitchen, the smell of smoke and dried fish filling the air. The pots were old, the firewood damp. She crouched low, coaxing the flames to life. As the firelight flickered against her face, her thoughts began to drift again, to a different kind of light, the sterile glow of office windows where James used to stand late into the night, reviewing plans, his tie loosened, his mind always at work. She had seen that light once through the reflection of glass, ambition, control, and a quiet sadness he never spoke of. She remembered the last time she saw him, the look in his eyes when she said goodbye. "Don't come after me," she had told him. "I need to fix this myself." He had tried to stop her, his hand reaching for hers, but she had pulled away. "Please, Diep," he had said softly. "I can take care of it." But she had shaken her head. Some burdens, she believed, were meant to be carried alone. Now, as she stirred the pot, she wondered if she had made the right choice. Was self-sacrifice truly noble, or was it just another form of cowardice? Her mother-in-law's voice broke her thoughts. "Don't burn the rice again. You waste everything you touch." Diep bowed her head. "Yes, Mother." She stirred more carefully, her eyes stinging from the smoke. When dinner was ready, she set the dishes on the old wooden table. Rice, a few vegetables, and salted fish. Her husband didn't come. Her mother-in-law muttered curses under her breath. The father-in-law ate silently, eyes downcast. Diep sat apart, waiting until the others were finished before she took a small portion for herself. Outside, the night settled thick and cold. Crickets chirped, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked. Diep stepped out of the kitchen and looked up at the sky. The moon hung low, pale and watchful. "James," she whispered, her voice trembling. I miss you." The words drifted into the darkness, unheard by anyone but the stars. The door creaked open behind her. Her mother-in-law's silhouette filled the doorway. "Don't stand there like a ghost," she snapped. "Go to bed. There's more work tomorrow." Diep nodded, turning away from the sky. She entered her small, dim room, its walls bare, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. The mattress was thin, the blanket frayed, but it was all she had. She sat at the edge of the bed, her hands clasped in her lap. Her fingers brushed against the small handkerchief hidden in her pocket, the one James had given her long ago. She unfolded it, tracing the embroidered initials with her fingertips. The fabric was worn, but it still carried the faintest scent of him. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. Strength, she reminded herself. She needed to endure. For now. Outside, the wind howled softly against the shutters, like a voice calling her name. The night deepened, swallowing the sounds of the village. Diep lay still, her eyes open to the darkness. Sleep would not come easily. It never did. Every creak of the wooden beams, every gust of wind scraping against the walls, made her heart jump. In this house, peace was a stranger she had long forgotten. She could hear the faint murmurs from the next room, her husband talking in his sleep, slurring words shaped by too much alcohol and too little purpose. Somewhere beyond the thin walls, her mother-in-law coughed and turned on her mat. Diep shifted slightly, her mind restless. Her thoughts wandered back to the bridge site, to the world she once belonged to but had to abandon. In her mind, she could still see James's face under the harsh sun, his voice crisp and commanding. He had always carried himself with quiet confidence, the kind that came from building everything from nothing. He didn't know that, at that very hour, the woman who once stood beside him was lying in a dark room miles away, her heart heavy with unspoken words. When morning came, the rooster crowed long before dawn. The sky was still dark, painted with faint streaks of gray. Diep rose quietly, careful not to wake anyone. Her back ached, her knees sore from the day before, but she moved with purpose. She washed her face in cold water that stung her skin and tied her hair back tightly. Another day had begun. In the yard, dew clung to the grass like tears that refused to fall. The air smelled of wet earth and smoke from the neighboring house. Diep took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a brief moment. "Please," she whispered, "let today be kind." Inside, her mother-in-law's voice soon broke the stillness. "Diep, what are you doing just standing there? The sun will be up soon and there's work to do." Diep hurried to the kitchen, lighting the fire to cook rice for breakfast. The flames crackled to life, painting her face in shades of gold and orange. For a moment, she almost looked alive again, until the older woman appeared in the doorway. "Don't burn it like yesterday," she snapped. "Rice doesn't grow on trees." "Yes, Mother," Diep murmured. The rice steamed, the air filling with its comforting warmth. Her father-in-law entered quietly, giving Diep a gentle nod before sitting down. "You should eat something too," he said softly, but she shook her head. "I will, after everyone else." It was always the same answer. As the family gathered, her husband stumbled in, eyes heavy with sleep and liquor. "Where's my food?" he demanded. Diep set a bowl before him, her movements careful. He ate quickly, without thanks, spilling rice on the table. Her mother-in-law spoke sharply. "You should thank her for once. She's the one keeping this family fed." He grunted, ignoring the words, and reached for more. When the meal ended, Diep cleaned the dishes and went outside to the small plot of land. The morning light stretched over the garden, catching the glint of dew on tomato leaves. She knelt, her hands deep in the soil. The earth was cool, alive. She worked quietly, humming a song she barely remembered from her childhood, something about hope, about the sun rising after the storm. As she picked the ripened tomatoes, she spoke softly to them as if they could hear her. "You grow in silence, don't you? No one praises you, yet you feed everyone." She smiled faintly, a sadness hidden behind the curve of her lips. "Maybe I'm like you." Hours passed, and soon her basket was filled again. round red fruit gleaming like drops of blood under the sun. She straightened, wiping sweat from her forehead, and looked toward the path that led to the market. The thought of walking that road again made her legs ache before she even began. But there was no other choice. On her way, she passed the small tea stall from the day before. The same woman waved at her. "Back again, child?" she asked. "Yes," Diep replied, her smile tired but genuine. "Work doesn't wait." The woman poured her a small cup of tea without asking. "Here, drink. You'll need strength." Diep thanked her, the warmth spreading through her chest. "Do you have family?" the woman asked. "A husband? Children?" Diep hesitated. "A husband, yes," she said quietly, "but it feels more like I'm raising him than living with him." The woman laughed softly, but her eyes were sad. "Life is cruel to women like us," she said. Diep nodded. "It is, but we endure." When she reached the market, she found her usual spot beneath a tattered blue tarp. The same crowd bustled by, the butchers yelling prices, the vendors arguing, the smell of life and decay mixed together. She set down her basket and began again. "Fresh tomatoes, 20,000 a kilo." Her voice was calm, steady. The routine was her refuge. Customers came and went. A young mother bought 2 kilos, smiling shyly. An old man stopped to chat about the weather. Each small exchange was a reminder that she was still part of the world, even if only in fleeting moments. When she handed change to a customer, their fingers brushed, and for a heartbeat, she felt human again. As the day stretched on, the sky grew hazy, a storm building in the distance. Diep looked up, feeling the weight of the clouds pressing down. Thunder rumbled faintly, like a warning. She sold the last of her tomatoes just as the first drops began to fall. Quickly, she gathered her things and started the long walk home. The rain came hard, cold and relentless. The dirt path turned to mud, her feet sinking with every step. The basket on her back felt heavier than ever. By the time she reached the house, her clothes clung to her skin, her hair dripping down her face. Her mother-in-law stood at the doorway, arms crossed. "You're drenched," she said sharply. "Do you want to ruin the floor too? Leave your basket outside." Diep obeyed, setting it down carefully. She handed over the money she had earned. "This is all, Mother," she said softly. The woman counted the bills and frowned. "Still not enough. You'll have to work harder tomorrow." Diep nodded, saying nothing. She turned to go to her room, but her mother-in-law's voice followed her. "You should be grateful we let you stay here at all. If it weren't for the debt, you'd have no roof over your head." In her room, Diep changed into dry clothes and sat on the edge of the bed. Her body ached from the cold, but her heart felt heavier still. She stared at her hands, red, rough, trembling slightly. "These hands," she whispered, "used to hold dreams." Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the cracked walls of the house. The sound of thunder rolled over the hills, deep and angry. For a moment, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. Then the rain began again, softer this time, washing the dust from the earth. Diep lay down, pulling the thin blanket over herself. The wind rattled the window shutters. Somewhere far away, she imagined James looking out of his tall office window at the same storm, unaware that the woman he once loved was watching it too, from a world far below his. Her eyes fluttered shut, exhaustion finally pulling her under. In her dreams, she stood in a field of green, her hands free of dirt, her heart free of pain. James was there, smiling, the light behind him warm and endless. But when she reached for him, he faded like mist. She woke with tears on her cheeks. The storm had passed, leaving the night calm again. The scent of wet earth filled the air. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed, announcing another day. Diep sat up slowly. Her body hurt, but she would rise. She always did. She touched the small handkerchief beside her pillow and whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll be stronger." Outside, the first light of dawn touched the world with fragile hope. The tomatoes in the garden gleamed under the dew, ready to be picked again. And so the cycle began once more.